BattleBots After Show. I'm your host, Will Bales.
I'm Mike.
Nice to have you back.
You normally introduce me, man.
No, I wanted to give you the opportunity.
You gotta let me know ahead of time.
No.
Okay.
All right, so this week was a pretty good one. It's sad for me because I'm out now.
But you had a good showing.
Yeah, we did have a good showing. We'll get to that, and there's a lot of backstory that I didn't know until about 24 hours ago when we finally took HyperShock apart to learn some things. To give you a taste, this was part of the drum. Thanks, Poison Arrow. We'll get to that. But first,
one of many parts.
Yeah, one of many parts. But first, let's go right into it. Let's talk about the Minotaur Warhead fight. So, I mean, Minotaur at this point is kind of hard to beat, and everyone just looks at it as the unstoppable force.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but going into this fight, I knew that wasn't going to end well for Warhead because they just have too many control issues to be able to win.
They also have a lot of moving parts.
That is true.
That Minotaur, could chew on. So
yeah, Minotaur made everything as simple as possible to put all that weight into armor, and it works. Simplicity is definitely key.
And they've been refining that design for a while, so
yeah,
they kind of knew. I think they know what works and what doesn't work. So
yeah. So I mean, everyone spins up. Warhead does their little dance because they know it's gonna be toast. And it's a pretty good hit at first. Did Warhead actually hit the drum, or did they hit like the side?
I think they hit the drum, but I think they hit the side. There's a pretty big gash.
And then decapitation. Yeah.
And then Warhead's head goes bouncing around like.
They could make a Warhead like battle top toy.
Yeah, like a Beyblade type thing.
You pulled on the tail, and then the head flies off. That would be great.
That'd be awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah, there's Daniel.
There you go.
Yeah, Hexbug. Do that after the HyperShock toy. I mean, at this point, if you're Warhead,
you've got no offense and no defense. So
no. It's so sad to see Warhead get trashed.
It is
because it's so pretty.
I guess their arms are broken too, right? Because they can't actually self-right there.
Yeah.
Probably when the head popped off. Because that's all driven by hydraulics, right? Which are powered by the head.
Yeah, it's some. If I understand correctly, it's like slave driven off the weapon drive to a pump. It's quite impressive.
So if the weapon stops, everything pretty much, all the moving bits stop.
I think so.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Oh, and they do their dance. Man, they love that dance.
Dance.
Of all times for Daniel to be super sedate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah. They were actually scared. That was the first time I think in this season where they were legitimately terrified.
Think so?
Well, I mean the head, which is a pretty sizable thing, it's almost 2 feet.
Did it actually go towards them though? I thought it went the other way.
No, it went straight up.
Well, yeah.
And then it came down and I think it hit. Yeah. Okay. So it hit the screws next to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just popped right off.
Probably made quite a. I didn't actually get to see this fight in person. We were on the other side of the pit, like towards the entrance. So I heard everyone screaming, "Oh my god!" Yeah. So we ran over to the TVs to see what happened, and by then, it was the end of the match, but we saw the aftermath. So, but I wonder what that sounded like in person, standing next to the arena. And then bing, 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 bing. It's like a pinball across the arena. Yeah, Daniel, I think you're right. I think it's the same clip. I think we have to look at that and see, because I'm dying to know if that's the exact same clip of Daniel's gorilla face.
I do like how sedate he looks after the fight, because that right after that he puts the controller down very calmly and then screams his head off.
Yeah.
Doing the normal robots thing. So
and that's usually a safety issue, because if you're holding the controller and you get into this big stuff, lose your junk. You hit you can hit the sticks with your chest or whatever.
Yeah.
Which we actually saw at Robo Games one year.
Oof.
But
that could be bad.
That was the other Brazilian team. The guy they call him Chino, whatever. He forearm blocks the other guys from hugging him after the win because he knew they were going to jump in.
Oh, because everyone gets excited.
Yeah, so he forearm blocks and puts the transmitter down. And then they were like, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, these guys have been trained to, for victory. So
they knew that victory dances were dangerous. it was good. Let's go to the bombshell fight because we have Jerome Miles and Mike Jeffries that are going to call in and give both sides of this fight. It's going to be good. So I know going into it.
Before we get into this, we were dying to see what was going to happen here because obviously we had just lost to Red Devil, so that's fresh in our mind. So we were really curious to see what Michael Jeffries was going to use, what attachment they were going to use, what weapon against Red Devil after obviously they just saw us lose. So I was thinking, maybe not the vertical spinner attachment, but I mean it definitely worked for him there. So.
Well, they got the one good hit in, and then we'll let Mike elaborate. But they had battery connector failure
On the
weapon. That's why it just quit after one hit.
Right.
I mean, he did a good job of just running into Red Devil. I felt like Red Devil was trying to play catch up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean Red Devil's self-righting. You see him try to self-right there. It's so slow that once he gets flipped over, he really just struggles trying to get the robot back to normal position. And meanwhile, Jeffries is pushing him around more and more and more and more, which flipping him back over. I mean, it's pretty much just Red Devil trying to get his positioning normal again here. And Jeffries' wedge on the front is like perfectly on the ground. So
and he's such a good driver.
He's a great driver.
I mean, clearly he's having some traction issues on the floor because you can see the wheels just spinning away and him kind of sliding about. But he's such a good driver with all his other robots, all the 30-pounders that he's built in the past.
He's got
it's a walk in the park.
He's got tons of stick time driving robots.
Yeah.
From all different weight classes. So and he's been to tons of events. So no surprise, the guy's a great driver.
Well, why don't we get Jerome on the phone? See if I can get him. Because I want the loser's perspective first. The spoils of winning is that you get to talk first. Or losing.
And you see here, I mean, even Red Devil trying to self-right is taking forever and a day. Meanwhile, Jeffries is just pounding it.
Hey, Jerome, it's Will Bales and Mike Galately.
Hey, Jerome.
Yeah.
So you're on the after show.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks.
So we just watched your fight here. We wanted to
you watched that?
We did watch it.
We have to watch it.
Oh.
Yeah, everybody at home has to watch it.
If you want to make you feel better, we could just watch the Witch Doctor fight where you ruin Witch Doctor instead.
That one is my favorite fight.
It's not our favorite fight. So I got to ask you first. Going into this fight, I mean, were you guys, pretty high confidence after just beating us? Were you pretty confident in your matchup against Bombshell?
So I'm always pretty nervous before a fight and never really sure if I'm going to win or not. But up until this point, I hadn't actually seen Bombshell do a whole lot of driving. In the complete control fight, he kind of just got carried all over the place, and his Cobalt fight was more of like a surgical, slow strike, cutting the wheels. And so I didn't actually know how well his robot drove. From watching those fights, I thought he couldn't drive very well. He was having traction issues and stuff, so I had a little bit more confidence than I probably should have going into it, because I thought we'd be able to outmaneuver him.
And those were also two other configurations, right? So he used a third new configuration.
You never know what to expect.
Exactly. So one thing that I did notice, though, after watching this fight quite a few times, wondering why the hell I couldn't do the same thing that Jeffries did, which was when we came, match starts, we kind of let Shaman go in and do his thing. By that time, Red Devil was already on Witch Doctor. And in this fight, I feel like kind of were a little bit more conservative maybe than you were against us. And
I think that it could have been. We definitely were trying to get more to his side. You guys didn't have a wedge, and so the front was the least optimal place to grab you. But it presented itself, and so we gave it a try. With their robot, I knew we were going to have a hard time getting under their wedge. I didn't know that hard of a time.
Yeah, I was surprised at A, how low they were able to get their wedge to the ground, considering the floor is not really flat, and B, how
I'm shocked.
your forks. You mentioned that it was difficult for you to get under them, under their wedge specifically, and I was wondering if if you have like a neutral position for your articulating center section, like in other words, is forks flat on the floor like neutral position, or can you actually preload them so there's some more weight on there?
So Red Devil was supposed to have complete servo control over the arm, but we didn't get that finished before the competition. So Red Devil is completely open loop, everything on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in a similar position. HyperShock.
Yeah, positioning the forks on the floor, if you went a little bit too far, I lost all traction because the treads would go up, except for in the very back. And so the robot was designed so the forks did scrape the floor when it was in the right spot, and there was some backlash in the chain drive, so that I had kind of a dead zone where the forks would just kind of ride on the floor, but I had to be within probably 10 degrees to hit that slack in the chain, and I feel like I spent half of the fight just trying to get the forks flat on the floor.
Yeah,
like looking back on it, I was like, my treads were up and I was getting no traction, or the forks were slightly raised. And it would have been nice to have just a place I threw the stick to on the transmitter and knew it was on the floor, but it didn't happen.
Season 3, buddy.
Yeah, Season 3.
We've all got a mile-long list of improvements for Season 3.
Yeah.
So, there's actually, it's interesting. When we just watched the fight, there's one point where Bombshell gets you in the corner, and your robot is upside down, but you're in the process of kind of self-righting, and the treads are actually 180 degrees from the normal position, so they're behind you, but the robot is like past, so you're actually like, you've got like basically the front of the forks digging into the ground. And I was thinking that would have been a pretty good arrangement to actually probably go after Bombshell.
So something that it's hard to see, I think that's about the point in the fight that we were having some other problems in the robot. We had the 3-stage chain drive after a Waiachi gearbox that lifted and lowered the body. And the chain wasn't strong enough in there. We broke that in the Rex fight, and we broke that in the Bombshells fight, and that's right about where it broke. Was when we were in the corner. He slammed us into the corner, and so we lost the ability to rotate the body after that. And the problem with that is it really took the weight off the drive pods. So a lot of the weight was just resting on the body upside down. The drive pods were just kind of barely touching the ground, and they would mostly just skip across the floor at that point. We were probably like that for the last 30 seconds or so of the fight. Just kind of. I mean, it was a pretty bad spot to be in. We couldn't have recovered from that.
Well, it was.
So
it was sad to see you guys go, because I liked it, and I'm sure that Witch Doctor wanted you to keep going because it makes them look better.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to keep going. You know, I had a couple hopes for the tournament. One is we were able to do the thing on somebody, and that happened with Witch Doctor. And then 2 was, if we were going to lose, I wanted it to be pieces everywhere, treads running around by themselves, and things like that. And it didn't happen.
Oh yeah, because for those of you that don't know, all the parts of Red Devil could drive independently. They had independent power, independent control. So what Jerome just said is that if the treads were disassembled from the entire robot and across the arena from each other, they could still run.
Yeah. I think, Jerome, you posted.
And we may have done better.
You posted a video on your Facebook page of just the center section basically working by itself, right, with no drive pods on, and even then you could show mobility, right, with just I guess there's a flange or something that mounts the stabilizing arm or something, so you could actually show mobility with just the center section.
Yep. I can rotate the tubes that cover the motors basically in the flange.
That's awesome.
the bolts on the brackets will go. So I can actually drive pretty slow across the floor, which is the body.
That is amazing.
That's hilarious. Was that a purposeful design or just kind of like an afterthought?
No, that was lucky the flanges were big enough, because if they were a little shorter, that would have just spun and not touched the ground. But
cool.
I did want a tread to get ripped off, and it just didn't happen. I was super tempted a couple times, I'm like, I could just put some plastic bolts in here, and it'll look right for a while.
I mean, I think you should have tried it with us. Let us get a hit on the side, and I think we could have tried that.
Yeah, that hit I think you guys would have hit at least as hard as Mike did, and that would have been enough for sure. Flip the whole robot over, so that would have been enough to rip a pot off.
Well, we could try next year.
So we have a couple of questions for
Oh, we
Jerome.
got questions for you, Jerome.
Jerome, why do you make all your robots red?
Oh yeah, people want to know why you keep the same color scheme, red and black.
I don't know. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. When everything else doesn't make sense, red and black just makes sense.
All right, another question is for Jerome. How do you think you would have fared against Tombstone?
What was that?
How would you fare against Tombstone?
Oh, we'd probably get destroyed. Depending on where in the tournament we were meeting up with them would have determined if we used our plow or not, but even then, it still would have been pretty bad. So, not well. We wouldn't have done very well.
You might have gotten the treads off.
Yeah, he probably would have knocked the tread off, but he might have broken them knocking them off, so that wouldn't have been as fun.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But, yeah, the horizontal spinners, that was the one thing I did not want to fight the whole tournament, was a horizontal spinner, especially a full-body spinner, because that was really the only thing we had, no chance
Well,
at being able to get
lucky
grab
you
without
got
getting
3
hit.
vertical spinners.
Yeah, 3 vertical spinners in a row. That was not ideal either, but that's how it worked out.
The last question we have is, why is your robot so slow to self-right? Was that done on purpose?
What?
So the self-riding speed,
Yeah.
so we actually learned something about Red Devil in this match that I didn't know before because we'd never really driven it, was that it only self-rights in one direction, first of all. If I spin the body the wrong way, it'll stay upside down forever and just keep spinning the tread pods around. And I didn't know that, and I actually went that way on the very first flip, and it took me a couple rotations to figure out that it wasn't going to be upright.
And that's
So
just
for a
because of the
minute,
weight balance?
I was worried. Yeah, basically if the body is upside down and I keep spinning the treads, I think it's backwards, it never fixes it. Just the body always stays upside down. And so I'm going to be posting a video on my YouTube page later, actually on the Red Devil page, showing it in my garage, showing the difference between forward and backward, but it does only self-right in one direction. So it is slow, though. We geared the body a little conservatively, I think. I think it could have lifted about 1,200 pounds at the end of the arm. I mean, there was a crazy amount of gearing in there, and I think it was just too much. I didn't realize it needed to go so fast for self-riding. For lifting, I was actually pretty happy with the speed. Like if we'd grabbed somebody else and tried lifting them. But self-riding needs to be really quick, and I just didn't even realize how fast that needed to happen to not get knocked around by a fast robot.
Yeah. Well, are there any more questions? All right. Well, thanks for calling in, Jerome. And I like Red Devil. I can't wait to see it again next year.
Hey, thanks. I'm fond of it. I'm a little mad at it right now.
We're all mad at everything. Just watch later at some of the damage from HyperShock. It's frustrating, to say the least.
All right, I'll check it out.
All right. Well, thanks again. Yeah, if you guys want to watch some more content from Jerome, go to the Facebook page or his YouTube page, and there should be some stuff uploaded soon. All right. Thanks again, Jerome.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Now, should we wait a couple minutes and do something else, or should we call Jeffries right now? How about this? Let's talk about. Let's go to the Bronco versus Razorback fight. We can go through that. All right. So Bronco versus Razorback. Now they're. What's that mean, Mike?
Well, they had a little bit of the pre-fight interview, like, oh, we've known each other for 15 years or whatever. So we kind of were in, they always play that up like when the fight's going to be weird.
Yeah. Like you guys versus Victor and Rotator.
Yeah. Yeah, they love that backstory stuff. So.
There was a good backwards flip.
Yeah.
I like that tactic.
Interesting.
Different.
Razorback went for the vertical spinner attachment. What would you have done?
With Razorback?
Yeah.
I think a good vertical spinner could do well against Bronco, but it's a giant double-sided wedge. Your only hope is to either A, get the sides, or B, get under it. And you're not going to get under the front if it's forked. Yeah, it just got, stuck on its side. And you're not gonna, especially with their configuration here, with just the drum and no little front forks or anything,
Right.
they had no hope of getting under it.
Right.
In that case, I would have tried to add something to get under them, some little sticks or a little front plow or something.
I would have made absolutely sure the robot can't get stuck on its side. But
Well, that's a
coming
different
from the guy
discussion
who got
altogether.
stuck upside down twice last year, so it's easy to say that now, but
Yeah. Man.
but I think Razorback gave him a pretty good run. Had they not gotten stuck on the side here, who knows what would have happened in the next minute something. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, the backwards flip from Bronco was clever. I did like that.
it was very clever.
It was different.
It was clever. I don't know if my understanding of Bronco's configuration here with the wedge on the back is it's a titanium wedge, right? Something.
Or AR.
Or
I
steel.
think it might be steel.
And the one on the front is titanium or steel.
Something
So-
like that.
Whether they go forwards or backwards might not really be all that critical. I mean, I guess if they're concerned about the arm getting damaged.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Xander Rose at the end said that they didn't push him over and let the fight keep going because they were dishing
too
out
much
too much
damage.
damage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were really doing any damage significantly. There was like a dent from that flip. There seemed to be a dent where the drum on Razorback hit the lifting arm on Bronco, but it didn't seem to really do any damage to speak of.
No, not any damage worth
I think
ending
that,
the match early
yeah.
for.
To,
but-
to answer your question of what I would do, I would say if there's no way to get under, any little forks or something with the drum, I probably would have gone with the grappler with their hook talon things.
I think so
Because
too.
A, they look really cool. B, they can twist around and do the jujitsu awesome thing that
And
Red Devil can.
and they can put weight on them. So
and they can put weight on it.
Yeah. So they
And they probably wouldn't have gotten stuck like that because they could just put the lifting
the
bit
weight around.
off to the side, and that would probably be enough to
Yeah.
toss them back over. So
Yeah. And Reason is like a
drive
boss.
really well.
So I mean, Bronco is a tough robot to beat. Obviously, they beat us last year, so
Yeah.
they made really quick work of us. And they did well last year, so. Yeah, I don't know if the drum was the right call, but I could see the logic.
No, I totally understand the logic. I mean, especially being a vertical spinner person,
Me too.
both of us. I get it, but probably not the best tactic in hindsight.
Yeah.
Because Bronco's on the floor and impossible to get to the side of. Reason's too good of a driver.
Yeah.
And he puts those headphones on. He can't hear anything, so you can't even taunt him into to accidentally doing something. He's totally in the zone.
I wonder if they're just noise canceling or if he's listening to some like Duran Duran in there or something.
He's really listening to the SpongeBob theme song over and over and over again. Let's go back and let's call Mike Jeffries. Get him on the phone. See if we can chat. See the winner's perspective of it, because he had some issues of his own. Because their spinning disc quit.
It's true. After one hit.
Hey Mike, it's Will and other Mike. How's it going?
I was doing pretty well. You guys?
Good. We just talked to Jerome. I think you're watching, so you probably caught it by now.
Yep.
So, all right. First off, why did you choose the vertical disc? Because Mike Galately made a good point that against Witch Doctor didn't seem to help much, and you have all the different attachments known to man to choose from. So why the vertical disc?
And the
I'll just
answer,
go
you're a
through-
better driver than me, is totally acceptable.
There's some good reasons. Our horizontal module, it's not invertible, so if he managed to get under the side of us and flip us over, we'd be done.
Ah.
True.
The axe, there isn't really anywhere great to hit on Red Devil. It wouldn't put us basically in his jaws like he could complete control.
That's a good point.
Also true.
The lifter would have worked pretty well if it had been working well. But we were having some issues with the worm drive and getting way too much friction in it, so we were having trouble lifting a full heavyweight with it.
Gotcha.
So that left us with the vertical disc, which we kind of considered our universal module. That was the one that would probably be decent against just about anything.
Yep.
And we also knew our batteries were a lot farther back than Witch Doctor's.
Ah.
True.
Yeah, well,
And
there you go.
probably better protected too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
They're decently protected. So we had them in one of the sides of that center pod. So front and rear is 3/16 AR 400. The top was angle 10th inch tie.
Oh, so you got all sorts of better materials than the 16th inch aluminum that you have.
It was eighth.
Was it a full eighth?
It was eighth, okay?
Yeah, the aluminum on yours wasn't enough.
It was subpar.
All right, so you chose the vertical disc and you got a really good hit right off the gate, and then it stopped. What gives?
Yeah, that was pretty depressing live. So what happened is we were using these XT90 connectors and on our batteries, and on that first hit, we're thinking the instantaneous current draw reflowed the solder on the connector, and the shock of the hit pulled one of the wires out.
Oh, yeah. We HyperShock V1 versus Bite Force. We actually had some connectors fail. We were using them as jumpers for power on the drivetrain. Each side of the drive was independently powered. It was a strange setup. But when we went in to turn off HyperShock, the plugs were sitting on the floor in a pool of solder because they had fallen out of the robot. So yeah, maybe there's an issue there.
Huge props to one of my teammates, Jason Brown. He went through and redid every single battery connection we had.
Wow.
Between the Red Devil fight and our fight against Poison Arrow.
Did you go to like crimped connectors?
We didn't have the time or the supplies to change connectors, so we got the biggest soldering iron we could get a hold of in the pit, soldered them in, zip tied them in place, so the wires were physically zip tied to the copper.
Yeah.
And then wrapped the whole thing in heat shrink.
Yeah, that'll work. Wow, that must have been a heck of a job. But with your 36 people at the event, it probably wasn't so bad.
Yeah, that was a huge help. The whole event was being able to just delegate the task to whoever was the least plague-ridden at the time, and that made it so much easier to get things turned around between fights. We didn't have someone who was half dead trying to reassemble the drivetrain after the Cobalt fight.
Right. How many people are on Chaos Core?
So for season 2, we had a total of 10 people on the team.
Wow.
10, that's it?
Yeah.
But like they were all
18 or
there.
20 or something.
Yeah, so the whole 10 were there. We also had some of the teammates' families came out to visit and support them. So we had Randy's kid, Jason's kid, both of their wives were there at various parts of the event. So you'll see them occasionally popping up in the background as well.
So you're gonna like buy a school bus next year and just have a machine shop in the back and bench seats in the front and just go out there on a giant school field trip?
Our plan B, if we didn't get the bot done in time to ship, was probably to rent a big van and then just take the entire team out there on the van while someone was in the back finishing things.
Oh my gosh. That is basically what we wanted to do. My mom said no. My mom said, there's no way I'm letting you drive out there. That's crazy. You'll already be sleep deprived. I'm not letting you do that. I said, fine, we'll finish it in time. So, all right. So you guys had some weapon failure, but it was basically, a little fix. So based on where you've been through the event thus far, what's your plan going forward? Because you're going against who next?
So we've got Poison Arrow up next.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
those guys.
We were quite intently watching your fight with them to see what would happen and thinking through which strategy would use for either of you. And it was kind of the same strategy either way because you're similar enough that how we'd approach the fight doesn't really change. And for Poison Arrow, the big thing we knew is we had to stay on top of them the whole time. They've got the slower spin up. So we knew we wanted to be super aggressive in the fight. That way they wouldn't have a chance to get to full speed and potentially, hit us and rip an entire half of the robot off.
Right.
All right, no spoilers, so...
Yeah, don't spoil...
Yeah.
I don't actually...
That's why I'm talking strategy alone.
Yeah. Well...
Just a fair warning.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, congratulations on your fight against Red Devil. You did what we could not do, which that was our strategy to, you got the one big hit on Red Devil, which after that, I think Jerome spent the majority of the time just trying to self-right.
playing catch up the whole
and
time.
you pretty much dominated the rest of the match. So, yeah, I envy you, sir.
Curse you and your well-prepared robot.
One question I've seen over and over again is how we got the wedge as good as it was.
Yeah,
And
that was a
that's-
pretty solid wedge.
So that's a little bit of a trick of the design. We had a center pod that was shock mounted to both sides of our drivetrain. So when we've got a module in there, wherever the center of gravity is, that entire center section has a little bit of a lean to it. So we were able to just grind off the bottom surface of that wedge until we had, maybe 10 or 15 pounds of the box weight on the wedge, and the rest of it was on the wheel. So it was essentially a sprung, fixed wedge dragging on the ground,
It's
no matter
funny.
what terrain we were on.
That's funny because in hindsight, now when we were, after we lost to Red Devil, we're walking back and forth from the pit to the arena, and I see Dan outside, and he's got Bombshell basically on its back with wedge pointing up. Fully assembled robot outside on the grinding area. He's standing on the table like a freaking rock star, like grinding the. I wish I took a picture because it was.
There's a picture on Facebook.
Is there?
I think you guys posted it.
I remember standing there looking at this guy going like, is he for real right now? Like, totally like, yeah! Like sparks flying off. I mean, it was like out of a movie. It was hilarious.
The man's name is Dan Hammer. He is by definition a badass.
Yeah.
And
and then
you
That
probably
wedge took forever to grind.
and at the
I
time
bet.
I didn't know, what the timing was and everything, but clearly it was for this match. So it was like, that's pretty funny.
And what would happen while we were grinding this thing down is we'd grind it for like 5 or 10 minutes, flip the bot back over, roll it onto the table, and see if it was sitting nice. And every single time for probably 2 or 3 hours, it dropped down about quarter inch or so, maybe a bit more, as soon as we roll the wedge off the table itself. So we just kept removing more and more material until it was right on the money.
wow, that's meticulous. Well,
and it resulted in a win. So
yeah, it
congratulations.
worked out. So yeah, congrats. Cool. Well,
We have a question from the comments.
yeah, question away.
Mike, where was the drone in this fight?
So with the configurations we got for Bombshell, we have the 2 spinning configurations, which are right at the 250-pound weight limit. And then we've got the axe and lifter, which are designed to be 15, 20 pounds under that. And we can only run short fuse with either the axe or the lifter.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually part of why we chose the axe against complete control, was we really wanted to get the drone into the arena. And we knew that was a fight where we'd have the chance to do that without putting ourselves in too bad a position.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Clever.
One more question. Mike, why are you such a drift king?
Whoa, hold on. all right. Why are you a drift king, Mike?
So that's actually one of the other things we did with the drive system on Bombshell is we went through and designed it so the top speed and the acceleration was almost a perfect match for my 30-pound robot Nick, which meant I've got 3 years experience driving this heavyweight effectively, even though we hadn't built it yet.
Wow. Yeah, that was clever. I remember talking to you about that. What did you gear it for? Like 16?
So we were geared 9-to-1 to the 6-inch wheel, so it was about 14 miles an hour top speed. And then we actually used a single rage bridge per short amp flow with 4 of those total in the drivetrain. So we were, I think, theoretically 18 horsepower in the drive, 150 amps going to each motor.
Wow. Well, it worked. It seemed that you guys were slipping around a lot. Was that just traction issues with the Coulsons?
I didn't really feel like I was lacking traction in the arena. I mean, there was certainly a lot of wheel spin, but I think part of that's just we had so much power that when we get going, it was very easy to spin the tires. But actually driving the bot in the arena, I felt like I was in pretty good control of what it was doing during the entire fight.
I would love to drive Bombshell and give you the controls to HyperShock and compare. That would actually be really interesting.
And I'll drive them both as an unbiased observer.
Yeah, there you go.
Next time we got them all in the same area, I'd definitely be down for that.
Are you going to bring
we're
it to
doing-
DragonCon?
Not sure whether or not we'll be able to bring it out because I'm not sure what the TV schedule is.
Oh, well, yeah. All right, well, we'll have to decide. I think I'm going to bring HyperShock. I think we have some footage later. I did actually get it running again last night. We'll go into the details of that. Witch Doctor's off in the corner over there, and it basically runs.
It runs.
Yeah, it runs.
But either way, we're actually completely rebuilding the platform for Season 3. We're changing the drive pod layout, so we're going to end up being geared a little bit faster because we clearly had a lot more torque than we needed.
Speed Kings.
And we're actually going to a little different configuration to move the motors inboard a bit. And then we're redoing that whole center pod to take the weight out where we don't need it so we can rebalance the weight of the bot a little better.
Gotcha. Well, interesting. All right, cool.
That horizontal module was miserable to drive. Our center of gravity was actually forward of the front wheels on that robot.
Yeah, you had to have those little fingers out in front just so you wouldn't tip over.
Yeah, it was such a weird thing to drive because it was insanely squirrely, but also pretty quick. So it took a lot of very precise maneuvering to even have a chance of hitting where we wanted to hit.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, thanks for calling in, and well, I guess we'll see you against Poison Arrow because they somehow beat HyperShock, and I'm very sad.
Yep.
All right, thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I've avoided it long enough.
On to the inevitable.
It's time.
I revel in your misery.
All right. So, but before, let me ego stroke a bit. Look how great the aggression and weapon scores are. I was very happy about that. The aggression is rightfully
Primarily
earned.
because of the rake.
Yeah, well,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
I wonder if the rake had to do with the weapon score.
I don't know. We talked about this a few weeks ago. We wanted to track the scores from week to week and see if they actually are changing.
Maybe in the finale we can, or as a post-finale episode, we can kind of look at how some of those robots progressed.
That would be interesting.
All right, so
hold on. Before we even get started here, I want to ask, so going into Poison Arrow, drone, right? So are you guys thinking, oh, sweet, we can hyper rake this thing again?
let me give you the time frame. So going into the Warrior Clan fight, Tyler had been out of commission for 24 hours. The bot pox had taken him out. And I don't know if we talked about the bot pox last week. I don't think we did.
Not last week, but we mentioned
But the bot pox took out a third of the crew, the production staff, the robot teams. Like Terry Ewert caught it. Tyler had it, and I literally did not see him for over a day, like over 24 hours. And we were supposed to go up to into this fight against Warrior Clan, and we were going to do the rake. The rake was his idea. He was supposed to control the rake, and I hadn't seen him, and he was, spending lots of time in front of the porcelain throne. And so I called Tyler, and I talked to him, and he just wasn't feeling well. And I'm like, all right, fine. We'll get Charles Guan, because by this point, Charles had lost to Cobalt. So I was like, all right, I'll get Charles to do it. He knows how to do liftery kind of things. He's right across from us in the pits. We'll get Charles to do it.
Wow.
Great.
I'm insulted you didn't ask me.
You guys were gone or still in the vent, or maybe you weren't.
Okay, it's okay.
Something
okay,
happened.
it's okay.
Whatever. Screw you. I hate your guts. So we asked Charles, and he's like, yeah, sure, totally. So we give him a shirt. There's actually a picture of him
You
with the
wanted
shirt.
the guy 0-2 to be doing your rake thing?
Did I mention we were sleep deprived?
Okay.
The whole point of this story is to prove that we're sleep deprived. Long story short, we had Charles, and then the production team told us we couldn't. And then I had to call Tyler and read him the riot act, and he, like a hero, came and saved the day and raked the drone out of the sky, and it was awesome. But by now, Tyler is exhausted, totally drained. He went immediately. We got out of the arena, won the fight against Warrior Clan, and he went to sleep. I stayed. Alex and I stayed and worked on HyperShock until 1 or 2 in the morning. And then the next day, it was like 2 hours. Our fight was at midnight. So we had 2 hours the night before, and then we had a fight at 4 o'clock the next day against Poison Arrow. So we didn't have a whole lot of time to strategize or plan. We had a little bit of damage that I can point out later on the front of the carbon chassis. from Warrior Clan where it wasn't protected. It was fine, and they mentioned in the show, oh, they got carbon fiber, it'll crack, it's awful, blah blah blah. It was more preventative because I didn't want something bad to happen, but we did go in and glue up the thing. So going into this, we knew that they were going to fly the drone, so we said, awesome, let's use the rake. The rake can still work as a self-riding mechanism, so let's just see what happens. We love the rake. It's
Who wouldn't love the rake?
It's hilarious. We did actually shorten the rake about a foot, partly for weight. We were trying to just sneak weight out of everything. We trimmed the wedge, actually. It was a much bigger wedge before. You saw it before.
Mm-hmm.
We trimmed almost a foot off of either side.
It was called the mega wedge for a reason.
Yeah, it was the mega wedge.
Yeah.
So we put on the wedge, which I whispered into the camera. I love that they kept that. Yeah, we got the wedge. So we put the wedge on, and then we're just like, okay, let's see what happens. And we just barely got to the fight on time. There was someone from the production team sitting at our pit table, like, we're gonna kick you out we're gonna have to replace you.
So, the reason you guys were delayed because you were repairing from the previous match?
Yeah, and just trying...
And configuring...
Yeah, we had never put the wedge on. And we had kept it under our table, under the pit table, hidden, like under a blanket, so no one would see it. So when I said that Poison Arrow would never see it coming, it was because literally no one had seen it.
I saw it.
Yeah, you saw it because you saw it here in this workshop. So no one had seen it aside from you and Andrea. So we're like, okay, well, this might actually help. And having seen their fight against Son of Waiachi, it was like, well, that's not good. I don't like that. This is the most armor we have. Let's use it.
Okay.
So
let's see the fight and see what happens.
So we go right out.
Coming right out strong. Well, you narrate it.
Yeah.
Damn
Well,
fight.
so we flip him over, and I was like, woo, we flip him over. And then we hit him. We almost got him out of the box. That would have been it.
So at this point, your weapon's already not working.
Yeah, at this point, it's just stopped, and we don't know why.
And it looks, if you look closely, it looks jammed up. Jam them up pretty good. Like, it's not free spinning, it's just kind of like locked.
1.5 speed of the video. Anyway,
No,
so they got stuck there,
your robot's
and we
actually
probably
not fast.
we probably should have just left them in the corner because they were stuck on the wall. But I figured they would stop the match.
You figured YOLO.
Well, yeah, and YOLO, and it's a better fight. So we keep going at them, and we were doing so pretty well aggressively, and they couldn't get under the wedge, which was a bit of a surprise because the first time that the wedge was on the floor was basically in the test box right before the fight, and it was like 3/4 of an inch off the ground. And I was like, crap, we're screwed. They're gonna get under it. We're hosed. Well, it was a nice try, but they couldn't get under it. Their little ground riding giblets on the front just couldn't get under it, and so we were pushing them all over the place. And it was actually, I was feeling really good about it. It reminded me a lot of the Bite Force fight from season 1 in the sense that we were having weapon issues. We got one good hit in. We were having weapon issues, but we were just out driving them, and then the magic smoke comes out.
And like Bite Force match season 1, your drive poops out.
Yeah, so we're like, shoot, all these terrible memories are coming back, and the magic smoke's out, and the drive starts to slow down in a very similar fashion that it did in season 1 against Bite Force. So, the rake's still working. Tyler did a great job of deterring Buzz the drone from getting anywhere close. But Casey and Zach spin up to full speed, and they count to 10, and they just start going at it, which is exactly what I would have done.
I thought it was funny though that Casey is counting the spin up time, and you guys were like, "What are they counting?" And I think you were like, "Oh, they're counting the spin up time."
Yeah.
But like, I'm surprised you could hear that from across the thing.
Casey was screaming, 1, 2, 3, 4. He was screaming at the top of his lungs because he didn't want Zach to not hear him, and it worked. They finally got a pretty good hit on it.
People are so obsessed with top speed of weapons. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. it's useless.
It's
It's
useless.
absolutely useless. So, I mean, I think that overall, if we just like skipped the last 20 seconds of that fight, I like it. Because,
It was a great
you know, we almost got him out of the arena. That's what, 2 feet off the ground? It's not amazing, but, you know.
You were like hitting the bottom of their robot.
Yeah,
Hitting
and
up, so it's-
so that was a great shot. And then they got stuck on the arena. I probably should have just left them there, but you know there was a rule that if one robot was stuck on the arena within 60 seconds of the first, of the beginning of the fight, that they would stop the match and go in and unstick it from the arena, and they continue. So I didn't want to stop to the fight. That's boring. It's lame. It's bad for the audience. It's bad for TV. Lacks continuity. Just go for it. And they would probably get unstuck anyway, knowing my luck. So I said, all right, fine, just let's keep going. I mean, that was a great hit. I mean, they gave him a nice little rooster tail there. And then they hit us. Once we were just dead in the water, then they finally started to get some damage in. They got a tiny couple nicks in the back armor. I was actually really impressed how well it worked. But when they got under us, they did do a little bit of damage. The top, you can see some abrasions. The bottom was 100 thou, or maybe 16th inch titanium sheet we got from Matt Maxim, which seemed to hold up pretty well. But you can see where their drum kind of chewed away at the titanium and the carbon frame. This damage makes me love carbon fiber. And you too.
You love me too?
Well, no, I love you regardless. But even you were saying,
I'm impressed how well the carbon held up. I even think that it's kind of nice that it delaminates and shears off a couple layers. It gives you.
it's kind of ablative.
It's kind of a blade of armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
And because it was so thick, I mean, the whole frame was almost 3/4 of an inch thick. It's 5/8 of an inch thick. They chewed away a pretty sizable amount, but the frame's fine. In the bottom row there, you can see the axle that they hit. There's a little nick out of the front end of the titanium drive axle, but the axle is straight. The carbon fiber around where the axle socket interface with the frame is fine. The only thing that's actually damaged here and left the axle at a funny angle was the aluminum socket that receives the drive axle and interfaces with the frame. So oddly enough, exactly what you think it would be, the only thing that actually took any damage was the weakest part of that system. So I'm really impressed by that.
Well, you were very smart to have a weak link in there and not allow it to transfer all the load into the frame. So
well,
bravo.
I'll totally concede that I'm not sure how much of that was on purpose, because this was kind of a hodgepodge between season 1 and season 2. There were a couple things that were remnants of season 1 design, and that was one of them. And it seemed to work fine. I was really impressed with that. I'd like to make it a little bit stronger in the future, but it worked. And the best part was that the axle was dead straight, so it would actually still keep working. The drivetrain would still work. The wheel was gone. The tire got ripped off, but it would still work. Mm-hmm. There's the full robot now with the axle off. They got some pretty good gashes out of the front wedge, but it was holding up. I was concerned about the mounting style of the front wedge because it was literally attached to the robot for the first time at the event. We had to drill holes in the chassis just to make it work. So I was impressed.
So talk about how this wedge is mounted on your frame, because in our case, we have rubber shock mounts, rubber isolating shock mounts, which is consistent with how you do your rear armor, right? Right. So but the front wedge is attached a little bit differently.
Yeah, the front wedge is attached in true YOLO form. I don't have any pictures within the presentation here, but basically it's a sandwich between the carbon frame, the steel structure behind the wedge, and 6 3/8/16 bolts with lock nuts on one end, and it's sandwiched between 1/8 of an inch of rubber, so it can kind of give a little bit. It's semi-shock mounting.
Semi-shock mounting.
But I was impressed. I mean, it held up. I was scared that it was just going to bust right through and the front end of the robot was going to come off and it was going to be disaster. But it didn't. And they even got a solid hit on the front, I guess the front right corner. It's a little peeled up in that photo. And threw us in the air 1 or 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet. So it could actually handle some force. So I was really impressed. That was a huge relief. But the thing I've been skating around here is that the drum stopped after that big hit up against the wall. And by all accounts, we basically ran into their drum when their drum was stopped, and ours stopped. I was like, that ain't right. So, yeah. I took at the event, we couldn't see.
We saw some cracks, right?
We saw some cracks, and I'll post some photos on Facebook, and there might be some up already. But there was a crack like through your sticker, because they Witch Doctor put a sticker on the drum for fun, and there was a crack right through the sticker across the drum. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But no one had looked at the bottom of the drum because there was no way to look at it. It was all jammed up and totally ruined. And so I finally got it out, and these segments of the drum just came out. They came right out. I was trying to get the axle out, and I couldn't because it's bent. And hey, Andrea, can you give us the photo of the bent? Yeah, it's not good. So I actually couldn't get the axle out, and it was actually really difficult. I had to break the weapon frame in half just to get it apart. It was bad. So the drum is like all sorts of broken, but yeah. So last night I got it running again, and it works fine. I ran into some stuff, but that's beside the point. The whole thing works fine. The failure point was the batteries, actually. We had the drivetrain batteries were stuffed between the YOLO boxes, which was our drivetrain, for those of you who don't know. They were stuffed right in there, and it was really, really tight. It was supposed to be a lot looser, but the dimensions that we got from the manufacturer for the batteries were just a little off. So we get there and we're trying to stuff it all in, and it seemed to work fine for the first 2 fights. But I think it was a mechanical failure where the outer cell on the bottom pack failed, and that battery went, let all the magic smoke out, and then the second one trying to charge that busted battery and try to deliver power to all the motors just gave up the ghost also. In the event, like during the fight, we didn't actually know that it was the batteries. We thought it was the drivetrain again. We thought it was the speed controllers because they were new from Vex. The Vex guys are actually really scared. One of them messaged me last night saying, "So what happened? Was it the Vex BBs?" And I just proved it was fine. They were fine. I thought it was the motors because we were running them at almost twice the voltage we were supposed to, and I figured the brushes just gave out. And we got from the arena to the pits without any suspicion that it was the batteries. Got over to opened the top up and we're like, what's wrong here? And finally get the batteries out, and they're like all dangling. Like, oh, this isn't good. So we brought them outside. So I was actually really impressed that the Thunder Power batteries held up, and they didn't catch fire and ruin my whole robot like they did with Witch Doctor and some other robots.
Our robot didn't catch fire, but yeah.
I saw some video that that proves otherwise.
Where?
It was a lot on fire. There was a lot of smoke.
Fire?
I guess it wasn't on fire, but it was certainly
chemical smoke.
All right. Well, I was impressed. So, but yeah, I mean, the damage was still. Look at this. It's crazy. It's these 2 giant sections of the drum. Almost half of the drum was removed. Just broken off. And if you look on the inside, there's all sorts of other, little micro cracks and stuff where all these stress risers are. So So I learned a lot from in the last couple hours trying to figure out how all this doesn't go together anymore. It's a mess.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I knew going into this that the aluminum alloy that we chose is a really brittle alloy. It's 7075, and so I was a little worried that it was going to crack. In hindsight, 6061 would have been better. It's a little more ductile, a little bit mushier. Would have taken a shock like that better and not just shattered. There's some questionable origins of this material also. Not sure if it's truly 7075 or if the heat treat is right. But, I mean, even still, you look at it. I'm going to put up some high-res photos. It's nuts. So, kudos to Poison Arrow.
There's some clear design flaws in
Yeah.
this here. I mean, you got a lot of stress risers in here, but
Yeah.
We have just one question for you, Will.
Oh, yeah. Questions?
Is this the same rake from the previous match, or do you use a new rake?
Oh, it's the
every
same
time?
rake. You can't replace the rakening rake. No, of course it's the same rake. It's this rake. It's the best rake, and we're gonna have to keep it for next year. Any other questions?
That's it.
All right. Well, we are gonna be off for what? Almost 3 weeks now. 3 weeks from now, we'll finally have another episode because of the Olympics.
the Olympics.
So I guess we'll have to, watch people's Facebooks because everyone's uploading photos.
Well, I
There's-
think they're running reruns, right?
Oh, and they're running
ABC
reruns of
will be
episode
running reruns.
5 and 6.
Yeah.
So yeah. So if you want to watch The Rakening again, you're gonna get to again and again and again. So yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.